Hello, everybody, and welcome. 1 second, I'm just going to get the presentation up. There we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is Windows Zero Touch using Microsoft Autopilot. And yep, I am not Dave Prince. If you've seen one of these before, this seems to be becoming my catchphrase right now in a weird reverse I am Spartacus kind of way. I am not Dave Prince. I'm James Dancer. I'm Group Technical Director, and I'm hosting for Dave today. So I'm just going to do a quick intro, hand you over to Dave, and then I'll be back for the Q&A. So a few of you, I think, have been on webinars in the VTC series before, but I'm just going to go through the standard housekeeping. If you want to chat, please do. Please make use of chat. We love interacting with you guys. We love hearing questions. We love giving answers. Just above the chat box at the bottom, there is a little bubble that you can click that changes to Q&A mode, and that will put a little red Q next to anything you type in chat at that point. That means we'll know to come to that as a question at the end of the session. As we're going through them, we will uncheck the little red Q to know that we've answered it. So please don't click it again. We've had that a few times, which is always fun. So I am going to hand over to Dave Prince, our lead Microsoft and infrastructure consultant at Academia and Atama, who should be activating his camera now. Oh, Dave. You're like a second too late there.
I pressed it on time.
We got it so good on the last few, but there we go. All right, thank you, everybody. So I'm going to hand over to Dave now. I'll be back to join in the Q&A, but I'll leave you in Dave's very capable hands. Enjoy.
I will. Thank you. Good morning, all. As James mentioned, I'm Dave Prince, the lead Microsoft infrastructure consultant here at Academia and Atama, a job title that just rolls off the tongue. We are going to be talking about Microsoft Windows Autopilot today and the benefits that it can bring to yourselves as a business, and ultimately help shape the way that you use and manage and onboard technology down the line. So I'm going to run through a few slides. This is, if you have attended any previous webinars, probably one of the most slide-intensive webinars I've done. I'm not a fan of death by PowerPoint, so please excuse me. That's a couple more slides here, but we will get through them very quickly and then move on to a demo. So what I'll do, I'll give you 30 seconds just to quickly read through some of those questions on the screen there. Actually thinking about it, in case you're not looking at the screen, some of these questions are along the lines of, do you enjoy unboxing hundreds of devices? Do you enjoy scouring a building to find somewhere where you can actually store these hundreds of boxes? Where I used to work, we used to have a very large building, but finding somewhere to store a few hundred laptops was never fun, and we always got told off by our business manager for storing them in riser cupboards, which she very quickly pointed out is kind of breaking health and safety terms. You might be in a position where you've got a couple of IT labs, and those IT labs are very nicely cabled, very nicely tidied. And if you're like me, you don't like seeing cables, so you might have cable management platforms or systems. If you want to use an IT lab for building these devices, then you're going to have to pull it all apart. And no one likes doing that because it'll take you a day to pull it apart, 5-6 days to rinse these devices, and then another day to put it all back together. So yeah, there's a few examples on there, and some of them might seem familiar to you, some might not, depending on what your current laptop provisioning and onboarding looks like. Obviously, provisioning has come on quite a lot over the last few years, but I'm going back 5-6 years, probably a little bit longer. Days of SCCM, having to maintain large images, bits and pieces like that. But if you read those questions and the answer to those questions is yes, you actually do enjoy it, then maybe Autopilot's not for you, because Autopilot makes your life simpler. But if you do enjoy those little bits and pieces, then Autopilot will take the fun out of it for you. However, if you are sitting there thinking, you know what, actually every summer holiday in school, or every time we get a batch of new starters coming to the business, it's a very painstaking and annoying exercise, then this is definitely for you. This is the Autopilot does away with your traditional provisioning and onboarding of devices onto your network. So what we'll do throughout this presentation is cover a few of the points where Autopilot can be very, very beneficial for you and how it can help make your life easier. So let's start at the beginning. What does a typical device order and setup look like? So here we have a little shopping basket with a few vendor agnostic boxes in it. So you've got Lenovo, you've got Microsoft, you've got HP tucked away in the background there. Your IT manager, your bursar, whoever it might be, will go away and will order these devices for you. Once those devices arrive, they will be delivered. And again, you go back to having to find somewhere to store them. If you're looking at 5, 10 laptops, absolutely fine. If you're in education, then you might have a large suite of laptop trolleys, large suite of IT labs, and you could easily reach a few hundred a few hundred boxes. Then going back to what I was saying about finding a place to build these, if you've already got an IT lab, then maybe you'll repurpose that during a summer holiday. Maybe you've got a space in your office where you can go ahead and you can start building these. But of course, when you build laptops, they need to be on power and they need to be on a network, because no one is going to attempt to build devices over wireless, hopefully. So quite well illustrated by that picture there. Daisy chained power sockets, again, not good at all. But sometimes you find yourself in that position where you do just need to cram as much power and data into a room as possible to build these devices. Once you're prepared to build lab, you actually go through the very monotonous task, although I'll take a little bit of satisfaction out of it sometimes, of unboxing the devices. So get your Stanley knife, uncut, pull out the device, chuck away all the packaging, take all the leaflets and stuff that come in boxes, and again, it can be quite therapeutic, but it can also take a very long time depending on the amount of devices you have. Once you've got those devices out of their boxes and on desks, you need to hook them up to the network. Again, depending on your environment, you might have a very, very speedy network. You might have a very speedy backbone. You could have a deployment server that's sitting at the end of a gig or a 10 gig link, and you'll build those devices. Now, of course, probably not many people have still got 100 meg switches around, but if you have, that will obviously add to the amount of time it takes to build these devices significantly. Once they are all plugged in and you're ready to go, the admin will come along, or a group of admins, depending on your circumstances, and they'll kick off the build. So power on the device, they'll press that Pixie boot key, they'll enter the name of a device, they'll choose which image you want to build, fill in a couple of bits and pieces, and then click next. Again, there is a lot you can do to make that as little touch as possible, but there's still some admin interaction. Then you wait for hours. If you have pretty thick images coming down to these devices, you could be waiting. I mean, I remember back in the day, I would probably get the average build time, let's say, for example, would be 6 to 7 hours per laptop on a gig network in some cases, because you're pushing down that big base image, all of the updates that come with it, all of the applications. So again, everything adds up to that time. Then if your build process isn't, excuse me, it isn't watertight, then there's potentially some post-imaging tasks that the admin needs to do. So there's something which might not have been possible via your deployment platform, and you have to do it manually. So whether it's on a network share, a USB stick, whatever it could be, the admin will come along and do any of those additional tasks that can't be done by the deployment solution. And then finally, you have your happy user. Your user has the device, they're happy, you're happy, because you've done the job. You've got that device built, no matter how long it took, and you can give it to them and they will go away and work with it. Now, again, slight death by PowerPoint slide here. I won't cover every single one here, but we'll leave it up here for long enough if any of you want to read ahead. On the left, we have your typical build pros and cons, and on the right you have the Autopilot equivalent. So, for example, on the left, the IT team would need to manage the logistics of provisioning and the configuration of these devices. In Autopilot, devices can be delivered directly to users. You don't need any admin interaction before that box is open. So, beg your pardon, after that box is open, that can all be with the user. Some of you might think, well, that sounds a bit scary, because A, won't have admin rights, B, they can probably do whatever they want, C, what if they don't actually enroll it properly. It is extremely hard for them to not do it properly. You can drive them down this path, so you are guaranteed that the device they are using, even if you've never touched it, is set up in a way that you know that it's safe and it's secure. Another benefit on the right there is that Autopilot is purely cloud-based. So it's part of Intune, it's part of Azure AD. You have Autopilot sitting there in the cloud. You don't need to update it. You don't need to maintain it. You don't need to patch the boxes it's sitting on. You don't need to arrange for maintenance windows. And also licensing is easier. As long as your user has an Intune license, or at least that device has a Intune device license, then you're licensed. On the left there for, let's say, for example, SCCM, WDS, for example, you have to create your base images. So whether it be Windows 10 1809 plus all the updates, or Windows 1903 with all the updates, whatever it might be, you have to maintain that gold master image. So that image that ultimately will provide the foundation for your application to be installed on. Also, if you have varying types and vendors of laptops out there, then you will be in a position where you have to look after the driver packs for them as well. And I, for one, can say that's never a fun task. You can go to a manufacturer website, and to be fair, they are a lot better now. But I mean, back in the day, there'd be a handful of drivers that you'd have to spend that extra time hunting around for. With Autopilot, and I'll cover this in a bit more depth a bit later on, but the concept of maintaining base OS images has gone. There's no need for it anymore. You don't need these large, thick, monolithic OS images that you deploy down to your devices. So again, I'll cover that a little bit later on. But your applications, much like SCCM, much like Group Policy, or not WDS, but any other third-party solution that you've got out there, applications, all the ones you'd typically be used to on the old side, you can still get a new side. So MSIs, MSIX, Intune Win is a new concept, could be a new concept for some of you out there. Intune Win is if you want to deploy executables down. If a software developer does not provide you with an MSI for their application, but they give you an executable, and that executable has some parameters you can run against it, then you can bundle that all up into what's known as an Intune Win file. Unfortunately, I didn't think about that for my demonstration today, but it is very straightforward to actually create this Intune Win file. And again, if there are any questions, please do feel free to ask. It's something we've done plenty of times. So actually, I did cover slightly there on the previous world, full wipe of devices, and you'd have to re-image the device from scratch. So if the OS became corrupt, sometimes IT guys would just go, yeah, let's just wipe it clean and start again. That wipe it clean process will completely eradicate the OS from that hard drive. It'll then relayer that back on top and then stack the applications on top of that. With Autopilot and modern deployment, modern desktop, Microsoft like to call it now, you don't need to re-image these devices. Your device comes shipped with an OS and all of the drivers it needs. If a device is on Autopilot, you have your device here, and then Autopilot sits on top of that and says, here's your applications, and it stacks it on top of that existing base image. Back in the day, Windows 7, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, would have come with a bunch of manufacturer or OEM reinstallation disks. So Windows 7 installation disk, you have to put back into that device and wipe the drive and reinstall Windows on it. With Windows 10, that is very simply done from within the OS nowadays. If you're admin, you can reset your device. When you reset your device, it takes it back to that initial out-of-box state. So your OS, your drivers, everything that was bundled with that laptop when you bought it is still there. You don't need to go ahead and relayer that on top. And that is done courtesy of something called Autopilot Reset. So from the admin console that I can briefly touch on later, the admin will log in. Here's the device that's malfunctioning. Click on Autopilot Reset. It'll go down to that device, wipe it back to the beginning, and then go back to the out-of-box experience, which will be guided through, the user will be guided through Autopilot and get all the applications they need down there. Finally, out-of-box experience, again, depends on your environment, but you might be in a position where your out-of-box experience is done by the admin. So the admin has to click through the keyboard and the network and accept the EULAs and all these bits and pieces, which everybody reads. In this instance, you can customize what the out-of-box experience looks like for your users. You can hide the terms and conditions from Microsoft. Again, a little caveat there is that when you tick that button, you are taking responsibility for the fact that your users will be using OS properly. So you can make it look and feel how you want it to. So this slide here is a very simplistic, but to be perfectly honest with you, a very accurate image of how Autopilot looks and how the process looks. So on the left-hand side, you've got the admin, and on the right-hand side, you've got your user. So on the left, prior to this, the devices will need to be enrolled into Autopilot, and there are a few different ways of doing that. Once the admin has got these devices in Autopilot, or even beforehand, depends, you might want to set up Intune how you want it to be before you even order these devices. But the admin will make sure that the configuration profiles are in place, saying what users can and can't do. Again, if you're not familiar with configuration profiles, they're kind of akin to group policies. What can users do? What can't users do? How do you want their desktop experience to look and feel? And then making sure that the apps are in there as well. And then the admin will apply that Autopilot profile to a device. And that device might not even be in site yet, could still be in a warehouse back with the vendor or the distributor. So that device will arrive on site. Now, that on a one-to-one instance can then be passed straight over to the user. So we're hopping into the right-hand column here. The user unboxes the device. They are the ones who take the device out of the box and get rid of the packaging and all this, that, and the other. They then turn on that device, and during that initial turn on, they will be asked for, and I will actually add as well, you can now skip the keyboard language as well nowadays in the region, so there's even one less thing for them to do. But the user will unbox it, turn it on, connect it to a Wi-Fi, and it'll go, oh, you belong to this organization, here's what you need. So all the user needs to do is unbox the device and put in their username and password, and then you can see they start working. It really is that simple. I never thought I'd say that 5 years ago, back in the days of having to do all this manually, but it really, really is that simple now. What are the requirements for Autopilot? All sounds good, sounds brilliant, sounds amazing, but you're probably thinking, hopefully it won't cost too much more, or it could cost a lot of money. It doesn't. What do you need for Autopilot? You need a device running Windows 10 1703 and above. Now, obviously, by this point, I would like to think everyone here is well above 1703. Your users need to have an Azure AD P1 or P2 license, and the device or the user needs to have an Intune license. Again, covering back something we said the other day, there are multiple ways of getting these licenses. They can be purchased standalone, or you can purchase them together as part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite bundle, which includes both of those together. Also, if you're looking at the higher end of the Microsoft Business stack, so you've got Microsoft Business Basic, Microsoft Business Standard, Microsoft Business Premium, lose my wording there. At the premium level of that range, that is where you'll get these as well. You need a network, and even though it's a lot quicker, grab yourself a cup of tea and coffee. I put that in there because the prereqs are so little that page looked very, very blank. So cup of tea, coffee, Lucozade, whatever you want is optional. So going back a few slides, when I was walking through that process of what a typical build looks like, this is what a new build looks like. Now, it is kind of put in two separate paths here. It's not one simple flow. So the order is placed. Now, at that point that the order is placed, there are a few things that you can do to get these devices enrolled in Autopilot. If you are purchasing from, let's say, for example, academia, you would contact academia, you would say, I want to place an order for 500 Microsoft Surface devices or 200 HP devices, whatever it might be. And by the way, I'm using Autopilot, or I want to use Autopilot. At that point during the ordering process, we will get that information from the disties, from the OEMs, and then work with you to get those devices uploaded. Now, of course, if you're already a partner of ours, if you're already working with us, and it's something which we can look at working with you in more depth on. If it's a one-time purchase and you look after everything yourself, then we can just pass you over the CSV. The admin will then configure these devices, so configure Intune, again, making sure that it looks and it feels and the applications there that your users require. That is kind of done. You want to do that bit before the devices are delivered to the user. So in this instance here, the device is delivered. If you follow that little blue arrow pointing down on the left, devices are delivered to site. However, in lockdown, that's not so simple. We are working with a lot of companies at the moment who are ordering devices from us, and what we're doing is arranging those to be delivered to the users' homes. And what the users will then do is exactly that same procedure. They will have that device given to them. The user will unbox the device in their house. Then the user will connect the device to a network. Now, obviously, that picture there shows a network cable. Wi-Fi is perfectly adequate. Just bear in mind that over Wi-Fi things could take a little bit longer for them. But then the user can start work. A little bit more on Autopilot. Again, I won't go into a huge amount here, but the concept of imaging is dying. It's on its way out. You don't need to worry about golden images. You don't need to worry about base images anymore. You don't need to worry about keeping those maintained and having to inject drivers and inject applications or whatever it could be into that image. With Windows 10, you reset your device and you're back to where you were with everything you need. Getting new devices into Autopilot, I touched on very briefly there. It can either be a little bit more of an indirect process whereby you get the CSV from ourselves or from whoever you purchase these devices from, and then you can upload them into Intune. We can also become a delegate device admin on your tenant. Not scary as it sounds, don't worry, sorry, not admin, reseller. If we are a reseller on your Office 365 environment as part of the process, then we can actually put those devices straight into your tenant for you. You as an admin, you as a team do not need to do that. You can say, Academia, we want these devices, and by the way, they're going to be Autopilot, and we can go, brilliant, they're in there now. I'll cover a little bit more on those 2 points in a minute, because I've got a little very quick demonstration to show you. OEMs that are supported on this platform, at the moment, they are increasing. So Microsoft obviously being one, HP, Dell, Lenovo, Acer. I think there's a couple more, but the majority of the big names are on this plan. How do you get your devices? How do you get your apps deployed to your devices? Again, this is something that you do in Intune. So the app deployment isn't necessarily part of Autopilot. That comes down from Intune. So you still manage your app deployments inside Intune. Now, this is quite a big one. User-driven or self-deployment. Self-deploying, beg your pardon. User-driven, absolutely brilliant if they're one-to-one. So again, in the education space, you might want your staff to be on the user-driven track, but you might want your classroom IT labs to be self-deploying because they don't belong to a person. When you are doing a user-driven setup, during the out-of-box wizard, the user will put in their username and password, and that username and password will then tie that device to their account so you know who's using it. Obviously, if you have 10 devices in a classroom, you don't really want those to be tied to people because those 10 devices could each one be used by up to 100 students, for example. Again, more in the kind of business world, user-driven is brilliant for one-to-one devices to enable your staff to work remotely. Self-deploying you might use for kiosk machines or for digital signage screens. So again, you can take a device out of the box. This is going to be the digital signage box. We want you to have this application on it with this script, and that script will then present that digital signage screen. White glove deployment is a brilliant way of getting those very, very large applications onto your user devices before they're given to the user. So if you have let's say, for example, I keep using these as examples, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, for example, very, very chunky applications. You probably don't want them pulling down over a user's home Wi-Fi, or you probably don't even want them pulling down over your network as people randomly start coming onto the network. Again, white glove does bring the onus a little bit back more onto the IT department. But the concept here is you'll have an Autopilot registered device. It knows it needs to be registered, but as an admin, you can very, very quickly interject there at the point before it's given to the user, and you can install all of those big bulky applications. You can install everything if you want to, and then package it back up, send it out to the user. They're none the wiser that these applications are already on there. They put their username and password in. Again, it becomes registered to them. And when they open it up, it might still download your Teams client. It might download your antivirus, whatever it might be, the little smaller applications, but the large applications are already on there for them. So again, it's putting a little bit more onus on IT, but Microsoft have tried to cover all bases here because, again, you could have someone living in quite a rural area who has got a 4 meg internet connection, as I was working on a customer with the other day, and you don't want them to download 28 gig over that connection. And then other ways of getting devices under management as well. There are plenty, and I will cover them in a short while. Right, this slide here, I do not expect you to try and read that text, But what I was trying to illustrate here is that there are multiple different ways that you can get devices onboarded into Azure AD, Autopilot being one of them. You'll see, if you can see, the two little purple options at the top there. They are the two different tracks for Autopilot. So you have Azure AD, Azure AD joined with Autopilot user driven, and the same with self-deploying. There are some pros and cons to each. It's worth having a quick skim through that. I have put a QR code in for that site, so if you do wish to take a look in a bit more depth, you might find that one particular track doesn't work that well for you, so you might want to start looking at something else. Again, any questions, we are here to help. I'll leave that on there for a second if anyone wants to take grab of that QR code. 3, 2, 1, go. Right, your organization may not be ready for full cloud deployment. And what I mean by that is you might still have on-premise Active Directory. You might have quite a lot of applications, bespoke applications, whatever it might be, that hang off the back of your on-prem AD. Now, when you bind a device to Azure AD, you're predominantly going down the cloud route. However, with hybrid Azure AD join, that device can coexist in both locations. It can be on your Azure AD side of things, so your user can have their device at home. At the same time, it can also be registered in your Active Directory, just so that that computer has an object in AD, so it can then access your on-prem resources. So again, whether that be a file server, a print server, a custom-built application. There are a few more requirements for Autopilot with HADJ, Hybrid Azure Active Directory Join. Needs to be Windows 1809. So Autopilot was 1703, but Autopilot with Hybrid Azure AD Domain Join is 1809 or above. You need to have internet access. Now, key one at the moment is direct contact with the domain controller. Even if your user is at home and you want to set up Hybrid Azure AD Join, during that join process, it will need to have communication with the domain controller. So that's a big one to consider there. You need Azure AD Connect to keep your on-prem AD and your Azure AD in sync. You need to download and install what's known as the Intune connector, which requires Windows Server 2016 or above. So again, if you're still on 2012, that's something to factor in. You create a configuration profile for domain join, and you need to allow the computer running Intune connector to have delegate access over the OU where you're binding your devices in. Again, that's a lot more technical than I'd usually cover on a call like this, but it's worth running through. The Hybrid Azure AD join option is there, but it's something that you do need to put a few considerations into. So I'm now going to do my presentation-y bit, and I'll keep it as quick and short as possible. So you should be able to see 3 different screens here. You should be able to see 3 different virtual machines here. So virtual machine on the left is a device that has already made it out of the out-of-box experience. This out-of-box experience has been completed by an admin. This could be a device that is already in use. It's out there in the wild and it's being used by a user. At the moment, it's only, let's just say it's just work group joined, nothing special about it. How do you get this device into Autopilot? You would come down to PowerShell, and you would install script get Windows Autopilot info. That will pull down a script from the Microsoft PowerShell repository, and it will pull down a script that looks like, I won't show you the script, but pull it down here. And what do you do once you get that? I'm now going to run this command. Wait for PowerShell to catch up. Oh, I did the wrong thing. There we go. Open PowerShell window there. Get Windows Autopilot info. Now, there's a few useful tags and parameters worth bearing in mind here. You can export that file to a CSV. So I'll do hardwareid.csv. That will go ahead and that will create me my hardware ID hash key. Oh, what's happened there? Access denied. My apologies. I'm not running that as an admin. Bear with me one moment. Let's copy that. What am I doing? Right, let's admin. CD. Okay, apologies for that. So you will run output file and then stick that where you want. So hardwareid.csv. Make sure I've done that all right. And now you'll see your hardware ID has been exported from your machine and it is now in the format of a CSV file. Please don't try and remember this hash key. It is thousands of characters long, but this ultimately is a file that you'll need to upload into Intune that I'll show you very, very shortly. A couple of things worth bearing in mind. If you've got a loaded device already out there and you want to automate this somewhat, then maybe you could run that as a PowerShell startup script. Obviously, instead of having it on the local drive there, you can have it on a network share, and you can add the append flag. And what that will do is all of your machines, when they get that policy, will run that PowerShell script and start putting their hardware IDs into your shared CSV, into your shared Excel spreadsheet. Really cool one, which I won't demo now because I haven't got the agent installed here. You can run online. What this will do is it will grab that hardware ID from your local device and it will send it straight up to your Azure AD and Intune tenants. So you don't need to export CSV, you don't need to import it. Running the online flag will just put that hardware ID and register that device straight away as part of Autopilot. So there's a couple of steps there on how you would go about getting your hardware ID from an existing device that's out there in the wild. Now, moving on to this second device here, this is purely out the box. This is a brand new install of Windows 10. The user is sitting on this out of box experience. Now, very, very, very quick tip here, I won't go into a huge amount of depth on this one, is if no one's familiar, if no one's come across this before, you can do Shift F10. Shift F10 will pull up a command prompt. From there, you can run PowerShell and you can do your install script again. So even from the out-of-box experience, you can go ahead and run the same command I just showed you on the other machine, but during the out-of-box experience. What you'll notice on here, if I select UK, is that this is completely out the box. It's asking me a load of questions. It's asking me what the keyboard layout is. It's now going to realize I'm on the network and do some updates. Point is, this is not a auto-piloted machine, so the user will follow through these steps. They'll be asked to create a local account, which by default will be a local administrator. They'll be asked to accept the terms and conditions from Microsoft. They'll be asked about all of those 30-odd security questions that Microsoft now ask nowadays during the out-of-box wizard. So again, this is a purely unmonitored, unmanaged out-of-box experience. Now, if I hop across to this final machine on the right here, this one is autopilot enrolled. I will select, and again, you can skip this nowadays, United Kingdom, and give it a moment. Both giving it a moment. Pick a keyboard language, skip that. And in a moment, what you'll see, I wonder if running two VMs is making them fight, but the one just behind on the left, you will shortly see that it will start asking the user a bunch of questions. The one on the right, you will see says, welcome to Prince MK, just the little tenant dummy name that I've got there. There you go. So this one on the left here, the unmonitored, unmanaged one, is saying to the user, is this a personal device? Do you want it to be for personal use? Do you want to set up on the domain yourself? Now, that's probably going to confuse quite a lot of people. Whereas this one on the right here, welcome to your domain. So in this instance here, I would put in Office 365 email address, enter my Office 365 password, and of course, I forgot I've got MFA on this device. Beg your pardon, on this user. So let's just pull that one up. Again, this is another security element here. You can prompt your users for their MFA code before they enroll a device into your organization. You probably don't want people who aren't running secure protected accounts to be enrolled in devices into your organization. So MFA there during the out-of-box experience is another way that you can secure your environment. Now, this is a big one here. This is called your enrollment status page. There are three sections to the enrollment. One is just preparing the device, so going ahead and enrolling into Azure AD, enrolling into Intune. The next step is device setup, and then after that you have the user account set up, depending on where your policies are scoped to, whether they be device or users. Now, this here, at the moment, whilst it's doing device prep, will not let the user continue. You do have the option to say, allow the user to continue once device preparation is finished. At that point, it's enrolled, it's known, it's managed, but it hasn't installed all of the apps yet. So you can say, I don't want the users to do anything with their device until everything is ready and good to go. You might relax that a little bit and say, you know what, as long as antivirus is on there, as long as our core business applications are on there, then they can go ahead and start using it, and then the rest will just trickle feed down in the background. So we'll give that a minute, but let me quickly show you where you actually manage this here. This is my Intune portal. I will, to start looking at Autopilot here, come into Devices, come into Windows, and click on Windows Enrollment. So, a couple of key things here. You have your automatic enrollment. Automatic enrollment will get your device into Azure AD and into Intune. If this is set to none, then your device won't go very far. Not much can happen with it. So you would either want to set that to all, or if you're piloting this, set it to some. Then you have your enrollment status page, which is a bit that I just covered there, which we can currently see. Well, we can't see at the moment, ticking away in the background. This is how you can customize how far that user can go during the out-of-box experience here. So a couple of things to bear in mind here. This is an on or off switch. Do you want the user to be shown a status enrollment page, or do you just want to sit there saying, we're preparing your device for however long it takes? If you want the user to feel that something is happening and they can see that something's happening, it's a very good idea to turn that on. This next box here tells you how long you want to wait before that status enrollment page errors. So in other words, if you have tested your deployment and you know that an Autopilot and Intune complete out of the box is going to take you 45 minutes, then obviously make sure that's set above 45 minutes. If it goes above 2 hours, then tell the user there's a problem, you need to contact us. You can say block device until all apps and profiles are installed. You can say yes, and you can say all. However, bear in mind that will mean that the user can't use that device for a while. You can now set that as selected. So for example, antivirus being a key one there. You might say, once you've got AV on there, I don't care what you do, just bear in mind your applications will take a little bit of time to trickle down in the background. So that's your enrollment status page. Very, very handy stuff. You then have your deployment profiles, and I'm going very, very quick because I'm conscious of the time here. Your deployment profiles are where you say, is this a user-driven Autopilot setup? Is this a shared device Autopilot setup? What do you want to skip for the users? So terms and conditions. Do you want to allow that white glove experience for your admins to inject those applications in there? Do you want to preset their keyboard language and their region settings? All of those bits and pieces are done within your Autopilot profile. Then you've got your devices. Now this is where you import that CSV I showed you earlier, that CSV that you exported via that script. You can come along and import them there. It can take 15 minutes, so I won't give it a demonstration now, but you'll import that CSV up there, monitor its progress up in your notification area here, and then once that's done, click refresh and your device is there. Once your device is in Intune and in Autopilot, you will see that you have the profile status assigned. So I've got a few devices here that at the moment are not assigned any profiles. If I come along here, you'll see, and this is the key bit, is that these devices are already they're now in Azure AD. When you onboard a device using Autopilot, it will put a placeholder for it in Azure AD. You then need to get that device and put it in a group, and then the group determines which profile, which applications, which track it follows. So again, I appreciate, and I'm using this phrase a lot at the moment, it's a very whirlwind tour, but Autopilot in a nutshell here is a very, very powerful way of getting your devices onboarded, whether they are one-to-one, whether they are classroom devices and they're shared. it will make your life so much easier. And if any of you guys are on the admin side of things here, you can rub your hands together and say, awesome, it's now not my problem to unbox these devices anymore. Again, it is absolutely brilliant. It's being updated very regularly, new features coming out. So if you do use Autopilot and you find actually there's one little thing that would be very nice to have, then odds are they've probably already thought of it and already starting development on that. But as per usual, I'm going to say, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. As a reseller, as a Microsoft partner, we can help you along this journey. So from the ordering part to get them into your tenant to actually setting it up, however much help you might need, please do feel free to reach out. And I'm hoping James will realise that's his cue that I'm.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm here. Don't worry, it's all right. Hold on a minute. What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. What day is it? There we are. Q&A and video back on. Awesome. So, yeah, thanks very much for that, Dave. We've overrun a little bit, but we can hang around a little bit later on anyway. We'll just try and get through all the questions. If you guys have got to go, that's fine. But we'll do our best to get through as many in as short time as possible, which means I should shut up and read some questions.
Good plan.
So, Dave, first one. What if the operating system is broken or faulty after some time of use and it doesn't boot? Is there a way to deploy the OS like with SCCM or WDS, or repair it without an ISO or recovery drive?
So if the device won't boot at all and it's a hardware fault, then obviously you're going to need to diagnose that first. Now, obviously, this isn't going to take away every single aspect of IT administration here. You might need to still troubleshoot an OS, but if it's still in the position where the OS boots and it can connect to a network, then if you deploy down an Autopilot reset, that will take it back to the out-of-box OS. The recovery image for Windows is locked away under lock and key. Nothing can really break your recovery partition or your recovery section of that. So again, as long as that device is turned on and you have a network connection, then you can push down an Autopilot reset to that device. It'll clock it, it'll check in pretty much immediately, actually, a couple of minutes, and then it will start that kind of re-imaging process itself. Again, I use the word imaging. It's simply just recovering from the local recovery partition.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Is Autopilot suitable for an IT lab environment?
Yes.
To give a little bit more. The main thing, I'm assuming that question is because there is on the demo that you gave, there's a user needs to log in with their email address step.
Yeah. So on the demonstration I did there, that was a user-driven Autopilot experience. You can have your self-deploying image as well. So beg your pardon, your self-deploying Autopilot profile as well. So again, that is zero touch. That is the case. As soon as the device comes on and is plugged into the network, it'll go, oh, I should be talking to this tenant, and it'll go away and start pulling down the applications and policies. So yes, absolutely, it is suitable for an IT lab environment. Do bear in mind that slide that I showed earlier with the QR code. That will give you the different kind of cans and cannots with each of the different deployment types, and just do bear those in mind first. But short answer, yes.
Cool. So we can post the direct link to the QR code in a little bit in chat as well, just in case you didn't get it. I'm guessing this is going to be quite a quick answer. Does it work with 1809 LTSC?
Saying it's quite a quick answer. I do believe so. I do believe that this does support the long-term service branch as well. Yes, let's go for yes. Sorry, I'm trying to think now. I can get back to you on that one, yes.
We can confirm. It's all right. That's fine. Any options for Mac? A little bit of the conversation went on about this one in the chat, actually. So thank you very much, Ian, for posting some info. That has saved us a little bit of time and having to dig out the relevant links. So just to expand on that a little bit further, so there's a difference in chat. It was mentioned Jamf, and Jamf is kind of an analog for Intune from a mobile device management point of view. But the process that will get a Mac environment into an MDM system is actually a different thing. So that's known as previously the device enrollment process, now device enrollment. To have access to that, you need to sign up for either Apple School Manager if you're education, or Apple Business Manager if you are a commercial organization or charity. And that will allow you to largely follow the same process. And I think I don't like the fact I'm saying this, but hey, it's the truth. Apple actually did this process first. The device enrollment process has been around for quite a while in the Apple world, but Microsoft have managed to make it a very, very enterprise-led scenario. So you would you would use Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, respectively, to do the hey, I'm a device, I need to go and get some configuration from somewhere thing. And then your mobile device management system of choice would then handle the configuration. Now, a thing to mention is you can use Intune, and we mentioned this on the last webinar, as an MDM for Apple devices. So you can have that. I think the person that asked the question said I was wanting a single pane of glass or something like that. You can do that, but as we said in the last webinar we did, the depth that you can manage Macs with Intune is nowhere near as great as an Apple dedicated MDM such as Jamf. The final piece of the puzzle with this is that if you want to be able to do the process that Dave showed, i.e. first thing that happens is device fires up and the users ask for their username and password, you can use a product called Jamf Connect, and that's MDM agnostic. That doesn't really need Jamf Pro as an MDM to work. A couple of caveats there for that though, and that will ask the user for their Azure AD credentials to start the process. So basically, you can have the same user process for your Windows estate and your Mac estate. The tooling is slightly different though. And if you did go with something like Jamf, the integration allows you to enforce conditional access policies from Intune via the data that Jamf has into your Macs. So the holy grail, if you like, and the thing that is touted by both Microsoft and Jamf is you have Intune for your Windows estate and Android and stuff like that, or Android Enterprise if you want to bolt that on as well, and Jamf for your Apple estate, because they are the right tools for the job. But certainly from our own experience, what we prefer deploying, just because it is the best scenario, is that's what we use internally ourselves, and it is a very, very tight integration. So even though it's two different systems, it's actually pretty seamless. So Dave, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. I know I kind of rattled on a little bit there.
No, not at all.
Good. So next question was, and I think it's been answered by me actually that time, is it included with E3 and E1 licensing? If you haven't seen the link I posted during Dave's presentation, if you scroll down in the chat, that gives you a rundown. No, I was listening and I was paying attention to chat. That was my role. I've posted a link that basically shows you a breakdown of which license packs Intune is already included in. So
I think one very, very quick thing to mention there is, be careful with terminology of E1 and E3. You have Office 365 E1 and E3, and you have Microsoft 365 E1 and E3. Microsoft 365 E3 will have it. Office 365 E3 will not.
Yes. Good point, and thank you very much. I think we might have answered this one in the Intune webinar we did the other day, but we can go through that again. Can you take a system with Windows 10 Home/Pro and end up with Windows 10 Enterprise or Windows 10 LTSC?
So again, there is a lovely table from Microsoft for this about upgrade paths. If you are in front of a laptop at the moment, take a quick Google, or I probably should say Bing, since this is Microsoft. Take a quick search and look for supported upgrade path or edition upgrade paths. So Windows 10 Home to Windows 10 Pro cannot be done through Intune. To get the device into Intune, you need to up it to Pro first. So again, Microsoft offer a few variations here as to how you can do so. If you are going to be using Microsoft 365 Premium, which comes with a Windows 10 Enterprise digital license with it, then you can get a reduced rate to get your device from Windows 10 Home to Windows 10 Pro, because you're going to be then further licensing that through your subscription pack. If you are not going to be using a Microsoft digital license moving forwards and you just want a one-time hit to get that device from Home to Pro, then you're looking quite a little bit more. I think last time checking, somewhere between 100 and 120 odd quid. So you can't use Intune to get a device from Home to Pro. But can you get a device from Pro to Enterprise? Yes. Can you get a device from Pro to 10 LTSC? I would need to check, but again, there is some very, very good material out there from Microsoft that just gives you a column. Here's what you start with, here's what you want to get to, and whether or not it is possible.
Yeah, I think the general theory is that you can go up from anything that isn't home or below, because there are components that sit with inside Windows 10 Pro and above that allow you to do the process. So
Yeah.
home is kind of, it misses out a lot of stuff that it would use as a hook to be able to do the upgrade in the first place automatically. So the general theory, and this is not ratification, but is Pro and above are kind of stepped. Anything home or below it can't be upgraded. Where are we now? Okay, so
With hybrid Azure AD join.
There you go.
That
Yeah,
one.
with hybrid Azure AD join, what point will it need to speak to this on-site domain controller to join the domain? Does it need to be part of OOBE, or can it be later?
It is part of the out-of-box experience that it does need to talk to a domain controller. Unfortunately, I know where you're coming from. It would be brilliant if that was later, but it is during the out-of-box experience. It does need to have communication with and be able to ping a domain controller.
Cool. Do you need to manually put computers into groups to get a certain profile, or can it be assigned automatically?
So this is where the fun comes in. So by default, yes, you will need to put it manually. So you get the device into Autopilot. Once it's enrolled in Autopilot, once it's registered with Autopilot, it will then create itself an Azure AD object. Now, what you do with that Azure AD object, Santa, you can either go down the manual route, which is to get that device and to put it into that group. You can, however, if you have already got Azure ADP1, for example, and are familiar with the concept of dynamic security groups, so instead of having an assigned security group where you just say you're a member, you're a member, you're a member, dynamic security group is based off an attribute that belongs to that computer or user object. So what you would do is you would create a dynamic security group if you wanted to. I think it's something prefixed with ZTC. Basically, every device has an attribute that if it begins with ZTC, it means that it has been enrolled via Autopilot. If you want a one-size-fits-all, and if you want a catch-all dynamic security group that covers every one of your Autopilot devices, so you might be an organization that you only do one-to-one devices, then you can say all Autopilot devices that come in go into this dynamic security group. That dynamic security group has that Autopilot profile, and away you go. At the moment, there are 3 variables that you can go off to create these dynamic security groups. They are the ZDC one, which is all Autopilot devices. You can also base it off order ID and purchase order ID. So again, that would be something that comes a bit earlier on, that we would request from the manufacturer, from the disti, that this CSV comes populated with the order ID or the purchase order ID. And then it's really down to you how you want to chunk them out. So you might place order 1 for staff devices, order 2 for students in the attend devices, order 3 for sixth form students. That way you've got different order IDs. And if you did want there to be differences between that onboarding experience, then that's how you could split them out.
Yeah, and that's just reminded me of a point, actually. The thing we didn't mention, or Dave didn't mention specifically in the process earlier, is that if you want us to do the upload of newly purchased Autopilot devices for you, there is a permission grant that needs to happen. So we need to send you an email, and you need to click a link, or someone with admin rights over the tenant needs to click a link to allow us to do it. So there is a little bit of paperwork, and if you are not the or one of the global administrators on the tenant, you will need to ask a global administrator to do that. I just thought I'd mention that because unless Dave did and I wasn't listening. But
I did actually, James.
No,
you pulled yourself out there, mate.
That was when I was answering that other one. Oh, well. So if you have devices that are MDM enrolled to Intune, can they be brought into Autopilot without running the PowerShell script?
If you have devices that are MDM enrolled to Intune. Yes. So if I share my screen very quickly, I will show you a very useful tick box. When you set up your deployment profiles, I'll just wait for my screen to appear for you guys. If it's going to. Come on, be nice. Whilst I'm waiting, there is a tick box. When you create a deployment profile and you scope that deployment profile to a group, if that group already has members in it that are already Azure AD or Intune joined, there's a little tick box at the bottom of that initial box that says convert all targeted devices to Autopilot. So if you already have devices in Azure AD and in Intune, and they're in a group or multiple groups, and then you scope a profile for the groups, as part of that, you can say, if you're not already Intune enrolled, make them Intune enrolled, and that way you get the benefits of the Autopilot reset and other bits and pieces like that. And I don't think my screen's going to share, so apologies. But yes, you can. You can convert existing devices to be Autopilot devices.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I recognise the last name from this question.
Me too.
That's interesting. Yeah. How reliable is deployment through Autopilot, i.e. failure rate on deployment? We potentially roll out 350 plus student devices at any time.
So, bearing in mind I know who's asking this question, I can flip this right around and say, how reliable is your network? The short answer here is it is reliable. It is very, very reliable. I'm not going to say you are going to have 100% success rate, because if you have packet loss on your network, if you've got poor signal, if you are attempting to do it over wireless, whatever it might be, they will all contribute to a lesser experience. And apparently it's a very good network, which is good. In which case, I will say that you will have very, very good success rate. Just make sure that your network can reach out to necessary URLs that are listed by Microsoft, just in case you've got a proxy on site. So do factor those in as well, but it is a very reliable technology. Much like your network, by the sounds of it.
Nepotism is rife in this industry. Anyways, so we are, we're at the end, I think, of questions. So we'll sort of hang around in chat a little bit. So any questions you've got that you haven't asked already, please feel free to ask right now. I've got a couple of things to say, and then we'll turn cameras off and hang around in chat. So last chance, if you want to ask a question, have it answered by Dave's face. If there's anything that this has spurred in terms of thoughts that you may have, or other questions you have that aren't specifically related to this, I said this on the webinar a couple of days ago. We are doing a live Q&A consultancy roundtable tomorrow at 2:00, I think, Dave.
I'm looking forward to that so much.
So yeah, because it's a Friday and it'll hopefully be a nice day. We might even make it a bit more casual and wear a crazy.
Do it for my gardens.
No, that's not reliable Wi-Fi for me. So yeah, if you go back to the VTC page, and Ryan from our marketing team, if you are in the chat at the moment, if you could chuck a link, that would be great. And if you've been watching this webinar but thought, what about the Intune management process, and you didn't catch the one we did a couple of days ago, we'll post a link to that as well. If Ryan doesn't get to it first, I'll get to it when we put the outro music on. So it doesn't look like we've had any more questions through, so we can wrap up there. As I said, Dave and I will hang around in chat for a few minutes. I'm going to put the thank you slide up with some music. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.